The first lesson on transformations probably is not very difficult for you. In fact, I think this will be very familiar to you. Before we start in the lesson, I want you to look at this equation right here. All right, you've actually seen this. Now in this case, it talks about some function f and some stuff done to it. Well, I want you to think back to last year when you saw this. I can't even remember. Did you use P and Q or did you use H and K? I think you used H and K. All right. This is the equation of a parabola. If you remember what this H did, it moved the parabola side to side. If you remember what this K did, it moved the parabola up and down. Okay? And if you remember what A did, that affected the width of the parabola. Okay? So this equation you see here is really the same thing, but instead of talking specifically about a parabola, so instead of that squared there, let's just put an f here and say we can do these things to every single equation, not just the parabola. F represents a function, so it could be x squared, it could be the absolute value of x, it could be x cubed, etc., etc., etc. It's some function. Okay? And what we're going to do is transformations to that function. There's one other thing you may notice. You may notice that the k is on the other side. Okay, I don't care which side you put it on. In fact, I probably prefer it over here just because that's what we're used to. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. So here is the original x squared. This is the function f. But in this case, instead of calling it f, it gives you the actual name. It's x squared. Okay, and you can see it has those points that you have memorized. Okay, let's take a look at this. How is this different than that? Well, there is an h value of 4. Notice it's not negative 4, right? The equation has a negative there. So this negative is in the equation already. What is h? It's 4. Okay, what does 4 do? 4 will move it right 4 units because h is positive 4. It would move it right 4. So you would have these values. Okay, this is x squared minus, x minus 4 squared. Okay, and then what does this graph do? Well, in this case, h is negative 1, so it's going to move left 1. And you would have a graph that looks something like this. And now you should be able to label each of these points. Okay, probably only need to label a few of them to know where they are. All right, so that's not too difficult. Let's try another one. Okay, so in the first one, it was the h value. Now let's look at, these are actually k values. Now if it helps, you could write this as the absolute value of x minus 1. So if you don't like the 1 on this side, you could move it to this side. Okay, so original graph. Let's put a couple of points here that we know. What is this graph going to look like? What is that plus 1, or if you look at the second one, minus 1 going to do? This moves it down 1 unit. Okay. So something like that. Then how about this one? What is this one going to do? Well, this is a minus 3 here. If you move it to the other side, it's a plus 3. This is going to move it up 3 units. Okay. And then we will have questions where you can have both things happening. Here you have an h value of -2, you have a k value of -1. So this is going to move down 1, left 2. So something like this. Okay. So that is transformations, just moving them left or right. We call those translations. Okay. One that you're not quite as familiar with, but hopefully you've done your homework and now you can label these points. So let's be careful here. What is this 2? Well, if you notice, that's outside of the function. It's not inside the function. So if it's outside, it affects the y. This is actually a k value of 2, meaning it's going up 2. Okay, so I want you to get in the habit of drawing the points and then connecting them, rather than trying to do it just by looking at the graph and thinking you can move it up 2. Get in the habit of changing the points first. Transform the points and then draw it. Okay? Here, this is an h value. The h value is 3, so it's going to move 3 units right. So here, here, and here. Okay, this is 3, this is 4, 1, and this is 7, 2. Okay, this one's a little trickier. Well, tricky for a couple of reasons. First of all, we're not very good at reciprocals. Second of all, it doesn't give you what the graph actually looks like. You actually have to know that graph. Okay, so, I mean, I'm going to do this fairly quickly. So remember, if we took the original graph, y equals x, right, that's this one. Okay, and then if you take the reciprocal of that, you would have a vertical asymptote here. You would have a value of 1, a value of -1. Okay, and you end up with this graph. Okay, it might take you a little longer to do that, but hopefully you'll get good at that. So we're just going to do one of these because it'll get a little bit messy. Let's do this one. In this case, it's a k value of 2, so the whole thing's going to go up 2. So our vertical asymptote will not change. Our horizontal asymptote will go up to 2. By the way, remember last year I told you horizontal asymptote will always be 0. Well, here's an example where it's not. Okay, then we're going to move this point up 2 units. And we'll have this curve here. And if we move this one up 2 units, we'll have this curve here. Okay, now you'll notice there is an x-intercept there that we should quickly figure out. How do you find an x-intercept? Well, you make y equals 0. So we'll take the graph y equals 1 over x plus 2 and make it y be 0. So you get this. How do you solve this? We can cross multiply. 1 is -2x. X is -1/2. So you can see that point is -1/2. Okay, so little summary. H is horizontal, K is vertical. Get used to figuring out, is it going up or down based on where it is. That's the easiest of the transformations for sure. Okay, let's try a couple of examples that are a little bit different. The graph of y equals 1 over x translated 3 units left, 2 units up. Write the equation of the image graph. So in other words, the new one. So I'm going to write the original. 3 units left. How am I going to say 3 units left? Well, that's a horizontal transformation, so it's attached to the x. So I want to put plus 3, and I want to attach it to the x like that. Okay, and then if I want to go 2 up, I'm going to put a plus 2 on the outside. Okay. One other type of question that you'll see is where you don't really know what f of x is. Like this graph, we've never seen this before. But that's a very common question. They'll give you a sketch of a graph, some weird shape, and you're expected to do the transformations. Okay, in this case, h is -3, so you would move everything. You would move each of those dots back 3. Okay. And be careful, only put arrows where arrows are supposed to be. So I see an arrow here, so I have to put an arrow there, but nowhere else. Okay, this one here, k is +4, so that one's going to go, oh, sorry, it's a -4. That one's going to go down 4. So back to the original graph, go down 4 units. Notice I'm not putting any labels as to what the points are because there were none that were given to me. I know that there's, there are spaces here, but I don't know if they're actually a space of 1, 2, 3. So I'm just keeping the spaces the same, but I'm not giving any labels to them. Okay, last one here. H is -3, K is -4. Okay, so we'll do both of those. So I'm going to have a point there, have a point here, here, and here. And there are my graphs. Okay. Last thing for today's lesson, my least favorite thing, describe. Describe means you must use words, not pictures, not math, which is kind of weird. We have to use words. I had a great answer a couple years ago in the provincial exam. Someone said, explain how you got this answer. Now again, explain means you have to use words. So instead of doing the question, they just wrote, I used math. I think that's a great answer, but unfortunately, it's not a good answer. So when you use words, we have to see written words. Don't show, don't use arrows, but with words you can use point form. So how is this graph different than this one? What has happened to it? Well, you can see that's different. What does that -3 do? Okay, so I would say this graph is translated or shifted 3 units down. Okay, how about this one? Well, let's do it a little differently. Let's do point form. Let's just go down 4. Oops. Anybody notice that? That should have been up. So this one is down 4, left 3. Okay, that's easy. If you want to use other words, translated 4 units down, shifted left 3 units, like all of that's good as long as I know what you're trying to tell me. Okay, some homework for you. This is from the textbook. All right, maybe this is a good time to also talk about preparing for the test. All right, each chapter has a review. The review is pretty substantial. All right, it has a bunch of questions and all the answers are posted. I would use this for study. If you want extra questions, if you want extra practice, go to the review. These are always posted. All right, in the My site. I may even post them somewhere else, but for now I'm for sure going to say there. Okay? Good luck.